All right, what's going on, big dogs? So, women's sports. Women's sports has always been a pretty touchy subject, especially for about the last decade at this point. But, like a true hero, I'm willing to take one for the team because I'm willing to run into this burning building and try and stop the fire because that's just what heroes do. I'm willing to do this for all of you. So, before I get started, I want to clarify some things. I'm not here to bash on women's sports. I actually want women to continue to have their own sports and to participate and be successful because being a professional, no matter what level it's at, you're still a professional. If you're the world's greatest male basketball player, awesome. If you're the world's greatest female basketball player, awesome. That takes a lot of hard work, that takes a lot of dedication, a lot of sacrifice. A lot of things have to go right, and when things go wrong, you have to be able to power through. So I don't want to try, I'm not trying to discredit anybody. I'm simply trying to talk about why I believe women's sports, as of recent, have been declining so rapidly, and then hopefully provide a few solutions onto what women can do to kind of regain their spot in the spotlight and maybe start actually having some time on big networks like on ESPN and getting some good run time and being able to make that higher salary that they're all asking for. So let's get started. So I would like to say that probably back in about 2015, I believe, or maybe even 2016, when the United States women's soccer team won their, like, it wasn't their first World Cup, but it was their first World Cup in a while, and it was with the roster that they kind of currently still have to this day. Obviously, there's been a few changes, but like Rapinoe's still on the team. A lot of the more prominent figures that we all know about today are still on the team, or are this last World Cup was their last one. And it all kind of started after they won, and the ladies on the teams really just started talking mad shit about like the men's United States team and how they had never won, or they were never really even competitive in the World Cup, and how these girls deserve to make just as much, if not more money than all the men do. Honestly, at first, they had a lot of people rallying behind them, a lot of people backing them because they're like, hey, they're right. The men's team hasn't done anything. They shouldn't be getting paid that amount of money, even though way, way, way more people still tune in to watch the men's team than the women's team. Even though the women's team wins a lot more, the men's team still seems to be more entertaining, at least from a viewer perspective and going off of how much revenue they're bringing in. So another fun fact too, before I continue, is in every sport that you can think of, at least the major sports that you can think of, every single male's league makes quadruple the money that the women's league makes. But almost unanimously, the women's league pay out a higher percentage of their profit to their athletes. Okay, so technically the women are getting paid more than the men. It's just that they aren't bringing in as much money to their sport. Okay, I know a lot of people don't like hearing that, and I know a lot of people find that controversial, but it's the truth. You can't just make money out of thin air. It's not how that works. But like I said, they kind of got the fire started, and they kept on fanning the flames, trying to continue to push the idea that they deserved as much or more money and more publicity than the men's sports did. And this fire quickly spread to the WNBA, which might have been the worst thing to happen to this movement. Because for whatever reason, the women in the WNBA not only thought they were deserving of the same money as LeBron James, and that their teams were performing better. No. They thought that they were actually genuinely better than the men. There were several women who came out and were like, I'm better than DeMarcus Cousins. I'm better than Stephen Curry. I'm better than LeBron. Like, come on. Now you're just making stuff up. And it was at this point where people kind of were like, all right, we were with you on the money thing. You can't be sitting here and saying you're as good as one of the two best players of all time in that said sport. Yeah, you can't say that, okay? You can't say that you're as good as DeMarcus Cousins when he has a foot of height on you and like 120 pounds and is way more muscular and way more athletic. You just can't, okay? You can't be saying that. And this kind of started derailing some people. And instead of backing off and claiming that, they were just kind of in the heat of the moment, they were just saying things, they could have backpedaled. They could have backed up a little bit and said, hey, we were just in the heat of the moment. We're irritated about this issue and we're just being passionate. Obviously, we're not as good as those guys, but we just want to get similar recognition to these men's leagues. They could have done that. But all of these women have continued, including Megan Rapinoe and Brittany Reiner, I believe is her name, the NBA girl who we brought back from Russia prison, and several others in the WNBA and even in female collegiate sports have been very outspoken about how they deserve, not earned, but deserve to be paid and looked at as being as good, if not better, than their male counterparts. To debunk those claims, as sad as it is to say, and as much as I'm sure people are going to yell at me in the comments for this, women are not as good at these sports as men are. Okay? It's just not the case. Not only that, but a lot of these women's sports jumped onto a trending sport that was already heavily taken over by a league, right? Even other men's leagues of these kind are not getting the same publicity. Those guys aren't making the same amount of money because they're not as entertaining. They don't draw as many eyes. They don't put butts in seats at the stadium. They don't sell jerseys, because what people want to see is peak athletic performance when it comes to this stuff. And I do think that there is an outlet for these women's sports. The first thing that they need to do, the very first thing they need to do, is they need to just stop. They need to stop complaining, and they need to be able to humble themselves and be like, you know what? Our sport doesn't rack in as many eyes. It doesn't put as many people in the seats or as many people in the stands. Sure, our ad revenue isn't as high and our sponsorships aren't as wonderful and glorious as a lot of these other athletes. That's not the greatest, but how cool is it to say that you're a professional athlete? You get paid to play a professional sport. Humble yourself. And I'm not even saying that just for women, right? It's not fair for everybody. Like, yeah, it sucks that these women don't have the same publicity as the men, and they aren't making these billions and billions of dollars because their sport just isn't as entertaining as the men's counterpart. That does suck, right? But there's nothing you can do about it. It happens to so many people in life. There's so many, I can think of like Julian Newman, all of these up and coming young basketball phenoms or football phenoms all over the United States who, by the time they're a senior in high school, they're like 5'8", and they don't even make it to a Division I school because, like, yeah, they can dribble really well and their shooting's good, but when you're 5'8", you can't box anyone out. You don't have the frame. You don't have the height to get rebounds or to try and block shots or to get in people's way. And when you're on the football field, being that short, it kind of limits you to what position you can play. And then you have to really narrow down yourself to that one position and still try to outcompete people who are going to be just as fast as you, probably just as quick as you, but they have that 4 or 5 inch advantage. And that's a lot in a sport. It really is. To become a short athlete nowadays is next to impossible. There's not a ton of athletes out there that are under like 5'10", right? 5'10", 5'11" is kind of the cutoff line in most professional sports. Maybe not soccer, but when it comes to like hockey, the NHL, even the MLB is really starting to kind of see a big spike in height, right? That's kind of become a big priority for a lot of teams, especially in the pitching aspect. And in the NFL even, a lot of people, you could be a great quarterback in college, but if you come out of the draft at 5'8", 5'9", your draft stock tanks a little bit. It does. People worry about it, and it does have effect on the game as a whole. So it's not just the women who have to suffer that their dreams of making billions of dollars aren't coming true. There's a lot of people that happens to, and it's for other reasons other than their sexes and not being as interesting and that kind of stuff. So number one, they just got to quit complaining. They just should be happy that they get to do this for a living, because there's a lot of people that would kill to be in that position. And the second thing I think women could do, and this is something I've heard brought up before, is I think if women want to participate in like the athletic culture and have like a sport that's on all the ESPN channels and, getting like a college game day style, like where First Take comes to their game and hypes the crap out of it, I think women need to start a sports league that isn't already popular. Like, it would be really dumb for a bunch of girls to go out and start like a counter to the NFL or to the MLB, because when you already have peak male athletes doing it and all the eyes are already drawn there, it's going to be really hard to take those eyes off of that content, right? You have to be extremely good, extremely better than that product to draw people away to yours. That's really hard to do. And honestly, I have a few examples. One sport I think women could start off with, this is the big one. I think this is the main one. I think women in this sport could genuinely make, I'm not saying billions of dollars, I'm not saying hundreds of millions of dollars, but I think they can make a couple $1,000,000 easily, which is a lot more than a lot of female athletes are making. And that's volleyball. Okay, I don't know about you guys. I'm a huge sports fan. I watch basically from Thursday night till Monday night, I'm watching football. The NBA is on. I rarely miss a Lakers game. I'm a huge Lakers fan, love the Lakers. And I'll watch any other game that seems good, right? But there's 82 games per team in a year. It's a lot to keep up with. When hockey season starts, if nothing else is on, I'm turning on hockey, man. I gotta have some sport to watch. Even soccer now I've been getting into. So it's been basically year round. I'm watching sports. MLB, I'm watching that all the time. Huge Twins fan. Want to see them do well. And one sport that I kind of grasped onto that I just never thought I would was women's college volleyball. I watched volleyball in high school, obviously, because I had girlfriends who were playing volleyball for my high school, and I never really understood it. Like, I got the whole point of it, and I understood kind of how the rotations and all that junk worked, but it wasn't as entertaining, you know, because it's high school. The difference in athletic performance is so high. And then I went to a Division I school, and I went and watched one game because my dorm hall happened to be right across from where they played, and I saw a bunch of people going in, and the students got in for free. So I was like, you know what? I'm not doing anything today. Let me go watch. I went and watched, and I happened to notice that a girl from one of my classes was on the team. I didn't even know that. So I said hi to her after the game. They had won, and I was talking to her, and she goes, if you think that was crazy, if you think we're good, you really have to watch these other players, these other teams, like University of Minnesota, Penn State, Nebraska, Wisconsin. Like, you have to watch these other girls. They are ridiculously good. I'd kind of blown it off, but one time I was at Buffalo Wild Wings, and they were having like their playoff tournament going on, and I was dumbfounded at how entertaining that sport actually is. I tried watching the male version of it, and I genuinely think that women volleyball is more entertaining than the male counterpart. And the main reason for that is that, yes, men have the athletic advantage. They do. They can jump higher. They can spike the ball harder. They do have that innate advantage. However, that advantage in volleyball, to me, kind of counteracts. Because the fun part about volleyball, about watching it, was just how long the set would go on for, and how long their like volleys, as they call them, where they get the ball back and forth over the net, how long they would go. Because in the men's league, a lot of times what would happen is if you had a bad spike and it wasn't super powerful, they would just hit it up, their guy would spike the ever-living crap out of it, and the set's over, right? Because men hit it so damn hard, it's hard to react in time. You have to basically be in the right place at the right time all the time. That's really hard to do. Where in the women's league, they're not hitting it as hard, but they're still putting a lot of power behind. There's still a ton of power behind that ball, don't get me wrong. It's extremely, extremely crazy to see. But there's still enough time for the other girls to react on the other team most of the time, so these volleys go on for just constantly. They go on forever. It is insane, and you're just like on the edge of your seat all the time. It's a crazy sport to watch. It really is. I never thought I would ever be entertained by volleyball in my life, but it's such a crazy sport to watch. I generally think if they funded a female like volleyball league, that a lot of people would tune into that. I really do, because I'm telling you guys, if you haven't watched it before, find a match, watch it. That stuff is insane. It's crazy to watch. I enjoy the crap out of it. I had never thought, again, I've been a sports fan my entire life. I never watched volleyball until I was 19 years old. I'm 25 now, and I still tune into the tournament every year because it's just fun to watch. I don't even know the players on the teams or anything like that, but I would love to see the best go at it. That would be so goddamn entertaining. Like, sports like that. I think there are other women's sports out there. Like, softball is still different than baseball, right? It's still different enough where you're not exactly sucking that same audience away from the MLB. Volleyball is different, where you're not going to be sucking people from like women's soccer or men's soccer or the NFL or the NBA. You're going to be finding actual volleyball fans. You're going to be finding actual softball fans. So I think the key for a lot of women's success is they're just going to have to find sports that men aren't currently doing or dominating in. They need to get into that, I guess, trend, or they need to start that league before a men's league starts. Now, I think if a men's volleyball team league started, I think the women's one would knock it out of the water anyways, but that's for a different video. And again, the other thing is, I really do think women's basketball, women's soccer, if they decided to do like a football league or something like that, I genuinely think that they could still be successful. I do think these leagues could be successful, because it's not that they're not entertaining. They're not as entertaining as the men's. But the problem is they all just seem to hate their audience all the time. They always just seem annoyed, no matter how good they're doing, no matter how well off they are, no matter if they sell out a stadium or not. They're always just complaining and saying that nothing's enough. Whatever you do as a fan, it's just not enough for these girls. And it's turning a lot of people away, because it's like, hey, I'm buying these tickets. I'm buying the pay-per-view. I'm buying the event. I'm trying to get these channels so I can watch your stuff. And then at the end of the game, you just sit there and whine and complain that I showed up. Like, yeah, you showed up, but you should have brought more people. You should be out there in the streets telling people, like, I showed up. Can't you just say thanks? You know, they just seem really ungrateful. And I think if they turn that attitude around, that women's sports would stabilize out a little bit. But that's for a whole nother video, guys. I kind of just got this video idea because I saw some Twitter posts about the women's soccer team, like, being disbanded and stuff like that, and a bunch of people, because a bunch of them are retiring, I guess, and a bunch of people in the comments were just like going off on this team and how they ruined women's soccer and stuff like that. So I started doing kind of a deep dive on the internet, and I found it kind of interesting about how women's sports had been failing, and it really got me thinking, and this is what I came up with. So but again, if you guys did enjoy the video, remember, please like, comment, of course, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It all really means a ton. Thank you guys for all the support recently. I'm really sorry for the lack of videos this last couple weeks. Work has been crazy, and then I got like bedridden with the flu and like pneumonia for a week. That sucked. I could barely leave my bed, and then I got a puppy, and that's been a whole other fiasco. So I've just been ridiculously busy, and so thank you guys for your patience. Thank you guys for sticking around. I do apologize again, but thank you all for your patience, and until the next video, guys, Godspeed.